Hello there, it's Lisa Starr with another episode of StarrCast. And I want to dive deeply today into the topic of what do you think? Wellness, right? I mean, it's what the whole premise of this podcast is about. But the word, what does it mean? A few of you have heard me say in the past that was asked maybe 10 or 15 years ago about what I do. And I would say I'm a spa consultant, and people would say, oh, you sell hot tubs? And so I'd have to explain what a spa consultant did. And now in the last 5 years, when I say that, people say, oh, that must be a really great job. So I think, wow, we're really getting somewhere. The public knows what wellness is now, but at the same time, when your word is co-opted by industry, it tends to be, I can't think of the right word in the moment, but you start to see it everywhere and it loses its meaning because they slap the word spa on a bed, the word wellness on everything, right? So what does it mean? And so this is a topic that concerns all of us. And I thought there's no one better for me to dive into this with than Mia Kyricos. So let me introduce her for a moment. Most of you know Mia. She was one of my guests on the original season 1 of my podcast. She's known to everyone in the industry because she thinks ahead. She helps us see the path forward. And I was at the Global Wellness Summit and I heard her give a presentation on this topic. And I said, that's it, I have to have Mia. So from 20 some years in wellness, in a variety of aspects, in the day spa side, in integrative health, and leading global hospitality companies, wellness arms, I mean, global, overseeing hundreds and hundreds of locations and properties and people. She's got the great sort of 30,000 foot view of what we're doing. And so I'm going to introduce Mia and say thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Lisa. I love your StarrCast, and I was very excited to be asked to join you again.
Well, thank you. Like I said, there's no one better for this topic. And when I heard you stand on the stage at Global Wellness Summit and give that keynote that people loved and said, where we've gone wrong in wellness, the first thing you think is, wait, where have we gone wrong? All we see is the numbers go up and we're doing great, aren't we? But, there's always a flip side, right? And so I really appreciated your sort of outlook on, hey, let's like think about what we're doing here more strategically and not just put the word wellness on everything.
Well, I like your thinking, and I agree. And I know the topic was a bit controversial, at least the title was. And really, I have nothing but huge love and passion for our space. And I'm happy to give you a little rhyme and reason behind that, the title, if it helps.
That sounds like it would be a great way to stage our chat.
Yes. So the reality is, I think we've done a phenomenal job really sizing and scoping the size of the industry from a business point of view with help from amazing institutions like the Global Wellness Institute and others that produce lots of data. I think we've also gotten really good at talking about the evidence, the medical evidence and science behind the modalities in the wellness space, whether it be massage, whether it be acupuncture, whether it be yoga. There's data out there that didn't exist before, and that would be in the category of things that we've done right. I would say where we've gone wrong, and honestly, COVID's really helped me to see this with new perspective, is that I think we've been limited by our own thinking. I think in our effort to deliver wellness to the world, we often compartmentalize it and we limit its potential by just the way we look at it. And that's was really the meaning behind my keynote that I'm happy to talk more about, particularly since I think wellness has just been a catalyst for all things. I mean, COVID has really just been a catalyst for all things well, right?
So
got that.
When you say compartmentalize wellness, give us an example of what you mean by that. What's an effect of doing that?
Okay, perfect example of this, I think we can all relate to, is just think about workplace wellness, right? For if we think about workplace wellness, most people would define it as a program, right? Or a perk that we've been given, that maybe we get free access to an app, Or maybe they've given us, when we were all in the office, they built a gym that we could use during lunch. Maybe they put the soda and candy machines in the back of the building and brought good, healthy hydration and snack stations, right? That's really been a program. That's great and been an important start. But if we didn't compartmentalize it as a program, if we looked at it culturally as how we work, how we treat each other in the workplace, if we feel included, if we took a closer look at our workplace practices, how we manage email or not, how we make requests of our employees, are we really asking them to work through the weekend or on vacation, or developing a culture what makes it impossible not to do those things? That's when I say that if we look at it culturally, you can blow the doors off just being defined as a program. And you can look at it as both. Yes, let's provide those products and services and opportunities in our offices, or now in our remote workplaces. But let's also look at what's making us sick in the first place and making us not thrive at work or at life. And so that's a really, hopefully, a good example of what I mean by compartmentalizing versus looking at something more strategically, because the opportunity is bigger.
Well, of course, and that is a great example. I mean, I think that you're referring to the sort of bolt-on approach that we had when wellness became more of a word we were using frequently. And let's say that was 5-6 years ago, right? We kind of transitioned from spa into the broader aspects of wellness for that same reason, right? It's being well. You can go to a spa and have a facial, and that's wonderful, but how long do the effects last, right? I mean, consumers are asking for more. And so now we have options for them, but are they really integrated options, or are they just stuck on top of something else? And, your example was perfect. I'm looking at some of the other examples you gave in the global wellness presentation about spa tourism, and, taking spas from amenities, which they were for years, we both know, right? It just had to cover its payroll and we ignored it. But, how about having it as a way to attract people in the first place and having it the core part? But there's more to that, right, Mia, than just saying, oh, we're going to put spa in our name. We're going to be the blah, blah spa and resort. And now we've got it done. But that's not enough, is it?
No, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Spa is such a good example, spa and wellness tourism, but particularly what's happening where I got my roots, right? I mean, I am a huge advocate for the business of spas, but I think we've learned that we've had different kinds of spa directors and different kinds of GMs. For example, when we put spas in hotels, you have spa directors that are like, okay, I need to offer massage, facials, treatments. I gotta maybe meet a sales revenue and make sure I keep therapists reasonably happy and guests super happy, and I'll cross fingers that they'll come back, right? That's a compartmental approach.
Right.
Today's spa director is someone that can think about, gosh, how can I be an essential element of someone's life? How can I get them to look at the services we offer as not things that they might occasionally buy, but that they need to buy because it's inherently part of their overall health and wellness practices. And I do a good job of a spa director, making sure I speak to the benefits of the services I offer, like massage and so forth, so that consumers can easily see why it's an essential part of their life, and they shouldn't feel guilty going to the spa as we used to, because it was pampering.
Right.
It's now being essential. And so again, that's the difference between a more of a compartmental versus global approach. And when I think of hotels, I still feel that often spas aren't always treated in the same light as food and beverage as an attractor, or the golf and recreational facilities, or the beach access. I think we do not always market them as a reason to pick a certain hotel over another, versus just a product or service you can enjoy, or facility you can enjoy once you get there. Right? Again, I'm just encouraging people to really think as strategically and globally as possible, and get out of the own box that we've put ourselves in often, or we've been put in. And that's really where I think the opportunity is now, in a world where the services that spas offer are are both curative and preventative in enhancing people's lives and their health and wellness. And we have a great opportunity to be a serious part of keeping people well, and caring for people's wellness around the world.
And there's so many aspects to it that go beyond what we traditionally offered in spa treatments, right? I mean, I was looking at the McKinsey report that you recently shared on LinkedIn, which was great. And they had various senior practice leaders talking about the aspects of wellness they're looking at, which included, health, of course, fitness, nutrition, sleep. I mean, these are all the issues we're talking about in wellness today, but they go far beyond your typical spa menu.
Absolutely. And I think one of the greatest things, again, this is would be what we've done right. We've made enough noise sharing the benefits and the business performance and the science behind wellness, is that you have arguably the top 1 or 2 business consultancy in the world, assigning their top researchers and experts to look into this industry and what the future is going to be in 2030. I mean,
Right. We've really arrived when
I
McKinsey
was like,
looks at us, right?
yeah, I had my little pom-poms and I'm like, I love that you care, right? And that it's a very extensive report. And what I loved about that approach, which I think is relevant to this audience, is they didn't just speak about the 6 areas of wellness that are exploding in a lot of ways, according to their research, but they also talked about companies that want to play in the space, what they need to do to be able to be really great providers of wellness related products and services, like investing in technology and those kinds of things. So, to me, it's a real bright spot. And also I love that that business leaders and a business consultancy of that, sophistication has really taken a huge interest in this, because they see the potential of this to make real commercial value for us all.
Well, I certainly want to talk about steps forward later. I think right now, let's focus on, defining it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you're a spa or wellness business today, and I say spa or wellness business because now we have all these hybrids, right? I'm loving seeing all the Restore franchises popping up,
Mhm.
which have cryotherapy or do IV or do a percussive therapy. And, there's all these options now that go beyond what the traditional spa offered. And consumers are obviously embracing it. But, how do you know as a business owner when something is going to work and has efficacy and is worthwhile, or when it's a fad? I mean, how can we have people thinking about what we do in those medical based terms?
Oh, I get asked this question a lot, from clients too, because they're trying to figure out if they're in the space, how do we evolve this product or service?
Mhm.
If they're trying to get into it, what should we offer? And I always go back to asking 2 key questions, which is, 1, what are your business objectives? And 2, what are your brand objectives? Because whatever you offer has to be mapped back to those 2 things. Not everyone should be offering cryotherapy. Not everyone should be offering acupuncture.
Mhm.
You know, um, Not everyone should be offering integrative services, what I define as things that could be offered in a medical facility or a spa facility. Some should be either or. But it really does come down to, what are your brand and business objectives, and who's the is there enough customer demand to support it,
Mhm.
right?
For that thing.
So too often, I think we lick our fingers and stick them in the air to see what trends are going to actually dictate what we do, and we follow along, versus really taking a business school approach to what we offer in the space. And it's just, again, from a different point of view.
I love your sticking your finger in the air picture. I mean, how many times we see that on a spa menu, right? Or you're consulting with a spa business that will say, well, we have a person that does Thai massage and we want to put that on the menu. And it's like, okay, you have one person that does it and they work 2 days a week. You can't have that on your menu. I mean, it's like having a restaurant that has chicken only on Wednesdays and Fridays and not the other days. It's either core to your brand or it's not. But in an effort to sort of branch out and try things, I'm seeing this happen now, like a lot of like, well, we'll try this or that. I mean, I don't blame people. How else do you know if there's consumer interest in your product? But, what's some advice we can give for how to sort of put your toe in that water of feeling your way into all of these new silos?
I mean, I think it's part of it. I think it comes down to mentality. Like if you are, you need to be in the place that says, listen, if I'm experimenting on something, that you are experimenting and have realistic expectations for them, right? It's like, try something. I think it's always great to, if you have trusted customers or clientele that are already consuming some of your products and services, that's who you should start with. Because if they already have a relationship of trust with you, okay, dip your toe in the water to say, yeah, you did read one of those countless trend reports that are out there that are suggesting infrared saunas are the way of the future. I'm making this up. Or who knows, maybe even it's how you deliver products and services. Maybe you're going to do it virtually because you're in a suburb of Cincinnati, but you have customers in the winter that would wish they were in Bali. I mean, there are things you're going to want to dip your toe in the water to see if it sticks or not. But I think the important part is don't think it's a failure if it doesn't stick. It's just not the right product for your market. But kudos for giving it a shot and trying. And I do think that in instances where there's either business data that could be shared, or more importantly for consumers, evidence, behind a modality, that's always a helpful thing to start with, to bring to market. And don't get me wrong, some people don't care if it is going to impact their health and well-being. Maybe it's going to give them a fun time out for an hour. That's okay too. But make sure you've got that those communication pathways established with your consumers so you can learn while something is succeeding or why something's failing.
I'm glad you spoke about the evidence. I know we have both driven many people to the Wellness Evidence website, and they're amazed when they find it. I mean, that we have these studies on the efficacy. I mean, peer-reviewed, excellent, medically approved studies on the efficacy of many of the treatments that we offer. And yet, across our world, many people do not know that site exists or that these studies exist. And that's a really good place to start. Let's start with what works. And yet, to your point, Mia, there's nothing wrong with feeling pampered, feeling good. I'm remembering the summit in Istanbul where Edie Weiner said, you people should have a room full of puppies and people could just play with the puppies. And I thought, that's actually really great. It would be fun and you giggle and you feel good. It's not a service with a provider, but you came in and you feel better when you leave, and someone else has to clean up after the dogs. So, what I think that it's important that we keep our eyes on what that means, going forward, that we are so diverse and yet we still want to have we want to have efficacy. We want to know that what we do does something.
And I do think, you made me think of two instances in what you just shared, because I think it's important. One is, we all think that wellness often needs to be categorized, or perhaps wellness is important to us as physical, emotional, mental, or whatever. We forget that it could be fun. We forget it might be financial. It could be, there's so many different things, and that wellness is deeply personal and different to each individual. And I've actually been in a room with 900 GMs where I've literally asked them, what does wellness mean to you? Right. And one general manager said, well, in our industry, my job changes a lot. And so financial wellness is really important because at any point in time, I could lose my job, or I have to move to another country that I have to change currencies and all these kinds of things. For someone else, it's making sure they have enough energy at the end of the day to go throw a ball with their kid on the 1 hour they have a day to be able to share with them, right? Yesterday, I had an amazing conversation with a woman who said, oh, you want to build a wellness retreat for me? build a retreat that actually has a giant stocked library where I can go sit by a fireplace, read all day, and someone's going to bring me food and drink as I
Oh
do
my
it.
gosh, I would love that.
She's
Sign
like,
me up.
that's my escape, right? So that's one category that I think is really important, that we need to allow for different interpretations of what wellness means to each individual and understand that. So that was one. The other thing is, for every step forward we have made with things like wellnessevidence.com, or the readily available information that's now out there that didn't exist before, that's all great progress. But we still have individuals that wonder, is wellness just a fad or a movement, or, or a trend? I had an amazing call with Forbes Travel Guide team earlier this week, and one of them had said that they regularly still asked by members in hotels around the globe of what wellness and well-being is. And do they really need to build anything, or is it just, a trend that's going to come and go? And we all had this knowing experience of feeling like this is not a trend. It isn't anymore. It's a movement, and the world has changed, and wellness is part of it. And that is a different mental model than, do I have to build a spa here or not? Are we over this yet? So that mentality is still probably more common than we'd like. And we still have to make sure we're doing our jobs to account for it. And it is resistance that we might sometimes feel, which is why it's even more important that we're communicating about the power of wellness as effectively as we can.
Well, especially in these times, right? I mean, don't you think that we've gotten sort of a COVID lift, and attention to what we do? Do you think that has happened?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's no question. I think we'll always have people that are intrinsically motivated in the space, whether it's on the consumer side or from a business perspective, because they get it. But I would find for every one of those on the consumer side or the business side, there's two that have felt removed from it, or not interested, or even potentially have a negative impression of it. What I think COVID has done has kind of given us a fresh start. We get a second chance to make a first impression.
That's a great way to put it.
Because they want to understand, wellness for a short period of time, I would say for the majority of 2020 and even a lot of last year, became suddenly synonymous with cleanliness and hygiene and safety, right? Like, are you washing your hands? Are you wearing a mask? Very sort of narrow again, compartmentalized in it. And it's on us to explain, hey, there are ways to prevent illness and getting sick by strengthening your reserves, by focusing on your wellness, by taking steps that are meaningful to you to reinforce your strength and resilience, to prepare you better in instances where you do find that you'll get sick. And so I think we've had this like amazing lift, because all that's happened is the work that we do and the products and services and facilities we offer have just become more important, right? And you have a second chance to make a first impression.
Well, and especially, what you're saying makes me think about that whole mental wellness world of it, which has seen such an explosion. I mean, and it's so convenient for especially young people today. It's convenient for all of us, but the young people are especially amenable to picking up their device, connecting with someone, talking about it. They're good with that. They don't need to go to an office. And it is like work on yourself that we all need to do. I was thinking about, was it Dr. Davidson at the summit who said, you need to develop this plasticity in your brain to be well, to be mentally well. And we spend less time on that daily than we do brushing our teeth, but it's just as, if not more important. So that's another aspect of wellness, mental wellness, that we're hearing so much about.
Absolutely. And I think too long, again, going back to how you started this episode, the compartmental approach on the mental side was just considering illness. Like, you have a clinical condition, or you're having a situational case of depression or whatever it is, or in the workplace where, we don't talk about that. It's not allowed to talk about in the human resources function. In fact, we outsource it to a third party because it has to remain private. We can't talk about it. And there has been a real stigma, which we all knew
Right.
beforehand on mental, but it was because we were looking at it from a mental illness standpoint, not taking into account that's really just a small percentage of the population that have a clinical condition, but you can struggle with your mental wellness on any day. You can go through a
Absolutely.
divorce. You can deal with a member of your family who's passed away. You can have a really painful breakup. You could have been diagnosed with cancer. You could have gotten issued with a huge tax bill that you weren't expecting. I mean, there's so many things that affect our mental
Just read the
stability.
newspaper any one day and that does it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Watch the news,
Right.
right? So we have not fostered, we have not raised kids. We're doing it now, but our generation and the generations before us were not necessarily raised to take a time out and realize, wow, I have to take care of myself. That's not selfish. It's my responsibility. They felt that it was selfish, and they felt that if they were struggling mentally, they couldn't talk about it. And so we're still coming out of that, I think, in some degree. And now I think we're championing mental wellness because it's not a luxury, it's a responsibility for us to show up for the people we care about.
I'm thinking of last summer when Simone Biles at the Olympics said, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I don't feel like I'm in the right mental state. So admirable, so courageous. And people, compared, oh, well, Carrie Strug, she went and did that vault and hurt her foot. Okay, we won a medal, but it's not about medals. And I think the young people are really tuned into that. They understand how important their mental health is. And I also think, just as an aside, it really called to mind to me how difficult those gymnastic moves are. Like you have to be in the right mental place to do that. And good for her for, taking her time out, as you said.
Well, and she said, what I loved is she said she wasn't in the mental headspace for that, right? So to be competing, and what a bold thing for an Olympian to say,
Right. And a young woman.
And a young woman who really gave everyone the permission to do that. I admire her, and I hope we see more of it. I've actually started to see some executives and people that are part of my LinkedIn network that have large prominent roles that have decided that they're going to spend time taking care of family members, or are changing jobs because ultimately they want to live a different kind of life. Number of things that I think we're starting to make it okay to prioritize our wellness, not just from a reactive standpoint, but because we have a better sense of what it will take to be well. We're making lifestyle and professional changes to do that.
So do you think, you're a business owner listening to this, and are you saying to yourself, well, how do I do that? I mean, right, we've talked about we have all these aspects of wellness: nutrition, exercise, fitness, mental health, sleep, appearance, that we can help people with. And I'd like you to talk a little bit more about, well, where we've gone wrong and where we continue to go the right way. How do I proceed from here?
I think we all have to take a step back and look at our businesses, or even those that are trying to get into the space, with the lens of what's now required of 21st century companies. And the reality is, if you look at a host of trends out there, from consumer trends, whether it's millennial, Y, Z, X, you name it, if you take a look at some of the conversations that surfaced during the pandemic, from inclusion and diversity and belonging, if you take into account conversations that are happening with regards to climate change, and some of the weather events that are happening that never happened when we were kids. If you look at all of these factors, 21st century companies should really be thinking about how they care for the well-being of people, planet, and community. And those people are not just consumers, but also their colleagues, employees, their leaders, right? Planet is not just like how you operate, but also, in your consumption practices or your ESG rules, but how you give back to the community within which you are a part of, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the community bit is not just your zip code, it's also the team that you're a part of. It's also, it could be your church. I mean, there's so many aspects of it, but really we need to look at it much more systemically, I think, and inherently, like think of it more like DNA
Mm-hmm.
versus this is just part of our business or it's a company goal that we have. We've been looking at all of these pieces separately and we need to bring them together. And you'll find, your heads of wellness that are at companies could actually expand to also team up with your HR functions on their I&D or their legal functions on ESG or any of the other alphabet city that we have out there. But I like to say, if we took a bigger look at that and just set the intention of, as a company today, people aren't going to do business with me if I don't demonstrate how I do care for my own employees, how I do, how I'm not negatively impacting the planet, how I'm looking at community. That's just an expectation. And I think that's what we need to start looking at. And also the fact that a trend that's helping that is that we've all been thrust into workplaces or at home that weren't designed for work.
Right.
The nature of work has changed. We have all been on those Zoom calls where the internet's gone down or the dog or cat popped up or the kid who's homeschooled because he's quarantined and his school's closed. We've seen whole people at work and in play, and we can't unsee that. So we need to really care for the well-being of people, planet, community, and make it okay to be our whole person, not just at work, but in life.
I love that observation. We have been on Zooms with people. We've seen their bedroom, their kitchen, sometimes in disarray, parts of their personal life that we always kept separate, right? The personal and we can't unsee it. But we realize it's okay. I can still do business, even though I know that you don't make your bed every day. It's okay. Right.
Exactly.
So, on that model, I mean, I loved what you introduced in your summon keynote on your little diagram of the ecosystem of wellness, which I know is a word that you've trademarked. And I wish we could show it on a podcast and we cannot, but could you talk a little further about how you see that ecosystem of wellness working in a business setting?
Sure, absolutely. The reality is everyone's ecosystem is different. And we really say it starts with leaders. If leaders take a moment to prioritize their wellness and are comfortable sharing that, whether it's they took a vacation or what their habits are to show up as the best leader they can. Maybe they meditate in the morning, maybe they work out, maybe they just stay hydrated, who knows? If leaders set that example, then they in turn will impact their team members and the employees who they lead. And if employees see that model, they'll feel it's okay to take that time out for the program you've provided or the perks or whatever that you're providing programmatically. They will feel like they have the permission to take a moment away from their desks, or to really champion what wellness means to them in their day-to-day life. They'll then turn around, be happier and more productive at work. And that's going to go into the brand, the products, the services, the standards that they're responsible for creating and delivering to your consumers. And then if consumers are happy with your company because they believe that you're caring for the well-being of your employees, and they appreciate your products and services, they're going to consume more. Their overall health and wellness is going to grow. They will be happier members of the community. And then your community, if they see that you're performing in a responsible way, and as a company, if you're actually performing better because you have employees that are happier and consumers that are consuming your products and services, you're going to perform better and you're going to be able to give back to the communities within which you operate philanthropically or with care for the planet because you're operating more soundly and with reverence for the planet. And then the community is going to be happier that you're in their backyard. It's going to be easier to recruit talent. And that system, the leaders that be treated will repeat over and over again. Now, everyone's stakeholders might be different, but the bottom line is that these ecosystems of well-being are how we need to think about operating moving forward. It's what will enable people to think about, oh, my HR department might have been separate from my legal department, or my brand team could have been separate from the leadership development team, or whatever. But the reality is that holistic thinking will just immediately change the way we look at bringing wellness and well-being to life, internally and externally, and the way we perform. And so that's my calling, is that we need to foster ecosystems of well-being moving forward. That's ultimately what's required now of 21st century companies, whether you are a spa or whether you are a multinational corporation. That thinking can apply to both.
Well, it was brilliantly and succinctly done in your style to sort of encapsulate that into a simple graphic. And I mean, it's that old message we've always heard since we were kids, do the right thing, do no harm, just be well, do the right thing, and business will come your way. And we know that today, in particular, the younger consumers are very interested in all of that. What are you doing for the planet, sustainability, and community? I think boomers like myself, maybe less so, but they are becoming more aware of that. And I think you're right, Mia, that for 21st century companies need to play in this space, or you sound kind of tone deaf, right?
Oh, and not only that, it's younger consumers want to know that you exist for more than profit. You have a purpose of some sort. And listen, I think there should be no shame in making money. I think people individually or collectively, you need to make money to actually do good in the world. It's just the truth. So I like people. I feel a lot of people in the wellness industry feel shameful when they're talking about making their businesses profitable or
Agreed.
a lot of, and I'm like, stop that. To do good, you got to perform well, and that's okay.
If you're not profitable, you lock the doors and everyone's out of work. That doesn't help anybody.
Exactly. But what I think younger consumers are teaching us, which I really appreciate, is if you're only existing to make money, that's not of interest to them. They want to know that you want to leave the world a better place, or you're in it because you want to help people be healthier so that they don't get COVID, or if they do get it, they have a mild case, right? They want to believe that you're in business for something more than just making money. And I think that's a fair ask. And guess what? Even if it was unfair, it's going to impact your business, because their consumption habits, where they spend money, is based on that. So yeah, it is about having purpose over profit. It's about having passion over, seeking how big your paycheck is. And the irony is, when you have purpose or you have passion, you tend to make more money. So it's just,
that's funny.
Your starting place is different.
Well, I think it's funny. I'm thinking in terms of my son, my 23-year-old son, who last summer left a job that he had because he didn't like the management. He didn't like the way they ran the business. And it's not even a big business. And I'm just like, what? That's just a foreign language to someone of my age. But, you try to learn from your children. And I say, oh, this is actually really important to them. Like that they're putting their money where their mouth is and using their feet to walk away from those situations. But I wonder, Mia, if you think that's been somewhat tech enabled. When I grew up, there weren't influencer jobs, and the options they have with the gig economy are so vast that they're not tied to the traditional job the way we were at one time.
I think there's two things. One, what you just said, 100%. Like, I think they had, there were lesser options. The second thing is, and honestly, one of my favorite philosophers is my father, Arthur Kyricos, because he said to me, he's like, Mia, he's like, you have to understand. He's like, we grew up and our parents grew up, like, you worked 9 to 5. Your job began at 9:01 and ended at 5:01. You would never be working 1 minute longer. You were never connected at night when it came to work. Your focus with your kids and your life, you had just as much time really out of the office as you had in the office. And because of that culturally, it didn't really care if the management was crappy. Who cares? That was part of, I mean, that's kind of like, he's like, you had no control over that. You did your job, you got a paycheck.
Mhm.
He said what happened over time is access has changed. So technically, we are available 24/7 unless we set the boundaries. And the second thing is, we started talking more about jobs as careers and passions versus a
Mhm.
paycheck, right?
Mhm.
So I think with every positive movement, there has been some, um, negative thing for us to manage. The same is true, I think, for technology, right? We're about to go through, and this is what I'm trying to get really smart about. We're trying to, we're about to go through a whole new world of the internet where the 2D internet is going to become 3D,
Mm.
and we're going to be experiencing things virtually. And over time, we might be experiencing things more virtually than in person. Now, whether or not you and I like that world, it's
Right. It's
coming.
coming.
And the questions that we're going to surface will be, how do we have a healthy relationship with technology? Well, how do we have a healthy relationship with virtual reality versus actual reality? All of these questions are going to come up that, again, we're going to be asking for our own wellness. How do we protect it? Do we need to disconnect to reconnect? All of those questions. So it's a new set of problems, but the solutions, I think, are going to be largely the same.
Mhm. So do you think that we have a time frame we need to work in here? I mean, I'm thinking about the whole situation. Like we have wellness services, we expand them, spas move beyond, the walls come down, we have tech, we make people feel good, we try to be profitable doing that so we can continue to do it. We've gotten this lift of attention from COVID, but how long will that last, right? I mean, how long will we have the consumer's attention before, people are creatures of habit, and once they lose a habit, it's very hard to get it back.
Yeah.
So I want to give some advice about keeping the momentum going for your business, and building on that ecosystem of wellness, and not taking the compartmentalized approach of where we went wrong, but like thinking broader. How do we do it? How do we keep it up?
Because you just said the most important word several times there. The future will be about the how and not the what.
Mm.
So I think how we use technology as an enabler of wellness and well-being, how we personally interact with it. Are we mindful? All those tools that we've been learning, we're going to use in a different way. Are we being mindful at whether or not something is hurting us or helping us? Like kids today, we monitor their time videoing and gaming on site, right? So there's a healthy balance, healthy being socialization, not so healthy being too many hours on screen and out in the real world, right?
Mhm.
I think how we work is going to be much more important than where we live or what we do. It's how we treat each other. If we have people like you and I that we can get in the room together, Lisa, and I think we could solve tons of problems together, not necessarily because we immediately know the answers, but because
Mhm.
we're willing to share our vulnerabilities. We're willing to look at, learn things we don't yet know, and we're willing to act on them because we're both committed to that end goal.
Mhm.
That kind of collaboration we can't do by the water cooler anymore in our office.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
need to do in forums like this. We need to be willing to accept things we can't change. I mean, all of these things. So the future to me is going to be about how we work, how we become much more inclusive, how we make wellness much more affordable and understandable for all, because we still have work to
Mhm.
do there. We have to demystify it. And I think how willing we are to adapt to change, because that's constant. It's not going away. We need to be constantly looking as leaders a step or two ahead of how changes in the world, and we had it with pandemic, we've had it
Mhm.
with technology. How is that going to impact ourselves, and how's that going to impact our businesses, and how that's going to impact the lives of our consumers and what they might need? It's all about the how.
Hopefully it's helped everyone's tolerance. I know I'm a somewhat impatient person, and I've learned to have to relax about, well, when you go to the store and they don't have the item that you need, or they closed an hour earlier than they were supposed to. And these were things that were never okay 3 years ago. Right. And suddenly, okay, we've all just said, oh, all right, we get it, because we were all in this together. That's the beauty of it to me. The silver lining was that it wasn't any one country or constituency, it was everybody. And now we step forward from that and try, as you said, not to have amnesia about what happened, but keep that sort of warm and fuzzy feeling about not overreacting, being mindful to the moment, and just moving forward in a well world that we have to keep going.
Yeah. And I think in some ways what COVID has done, this pandemic's done, it's leveled the playing field and it's moved a lot of the BS. We focused on certain things that we, in retrospect, I mean, I think I've felt this way. I'm sure you have too, where I was like, I can't believe that's what I was so focused on 2 or 3 years ago. Right. The whole value proposition, our whole value system has changed. And I think that's good. I'm more excited about the business of wellness and the future for spas than I ever have been before, because I think our value has only gotten greater and consumers are only more interested, and the how is more important to generations than that ever has been before, how we operate and how we treat each other. And I think it's such a great time to be alive and in this business. And there's more data and evidence that's ever been available before, through great resources that you've talked about earlier. And I think there's a much more greater willingness by consumers to try new things, by investors to invest in the space, by leaders to accept that they might not have experience in the wellness space, but they want to get into it. Like, I just think there's a much greater openness to this world. And lucky us that we're already in it, right?
For sure. We had a little bit of a head start. I know you and in your consultancy, Kyricos and Associates, you work with a lot of major national brands. Can you, in closing, just give us a peek of what you think a spa or wellness center will look like in 5 or 10 years? Like, what's down the road? What should we be thinking about?
I think where they exist is going to change. I think it's going to evolve. I think we're going to see. Think we're going to see them show up in different kinds of places. I think you're going to see them potentially be part of medical institutions. You're going to see them potentially be on company campuses. You're going to see them, there's so many retailers that have gone out of business, and there's all this real estate out there, or office spaces. I think we're going to see them turn real estate into experiential centers, not just a place where you go buy a product or, shop for traditional retail. I think you're going to see many more services come online. And I think you're going to see them go out in the metaverse. Wellness is going to go meta and omni. We're going to see them deliver their services in a 3D world, which is kind of a crazy concept, but I think it's going to happen. And I think you're going to see many more partnerships of companies that accept, hey, they want to get into it, but they don't need to build it. Who can they partner with? I mean, we've seen examples of that from like Whole Foods or Mayo Clinic, or, I think we've seen a lot of entities come to life. And I think it's a great time to be in the space. And I think investors are looking for where to put their dollars. And so here's rooting people on to try the new thing, or expand or evolve, or even shut down and restart with an evolved business model, because it's a great time to do that.
Well, that's wise words, collaboration and openness, and always looking forward. I'd encourage anyone listening to check out Mia's website, Kyricos.com, or a link in with her where you'll get to see all the things she's looking at and reading. Cause I say, I want to read what Mia's reading, because she's always thinking ahead. Thanks again for joining us so much. This was a really enlightening chat, and I hope people enjoy it. I love chatting with you.
Thank you, Lisa, and thanks for casting all the stars in our world. I'm really grateful to have
Oh,
been here.
thank you.